Hello, welcome to Green Oaks Education and Support Vocational Training through the Lifespan webinar. My name is Lee Weedman. I'm the Director of Education. This is my 25th year working at Green Oaks with individuals who have intellectual disabilities. And I'm excited today to share with you a little bit about how we prepare our students for employment opportunities. We feel strongly that many people with intellectual disabilities can and do have jobs, and they can and will be able to work, and that is the reason why this topic is so important, is that intentional preparation for individuals with disabilities to enter the workforce is really important. So we're going to move on to our next slide. We'll talk just briefly. I'm going to run through the agenda with you. We are going to cover comprehensive vocational preparation, what that looks like, how we can start early and never stop doing that, and things that we can work on along the way. Curriculum options, ideas for what to cover and how to cover it, materials that you can use. We're briefly going to touch on person-centered planning because that is an important part of preparation for employment and living our best lives. Employer training, job coach training, and vocational training specifics. So a comprehensive vocational preparation program includes things like job training, soft skills, behavior, communication, relationships, desire and attitude, transportation, money management, technology, and community skills. Some of those things may seem like, how does that, you may wonder, how does that have to do with vocational preparation? But in order for people, anyone, not just someone with a disability, to be really prepared for employment, these are things and topics that we really need to be addressing. We know from just recent studies that have been done and recent reports that have been on the news that these are things often lacking in anyone who is coming out of high school or college. Some of these skills are things that they are not ready to manage in their lives, and it does affect their employability and the readiness for the job. So we just encourage everyone to consider these topics. You cannot start too early on these things. We don't call it vocational training when children are young, but there are so many things that you can do to help start working towards this end goal of employment for individuals with disabilities. You can start when they're little, when they're in preschool. So obviously more focus is going to be on academics, and in a school setting, they're going to be more on academics. But even with your young children at home, you may not be focusing so much on the goal of pre-vocational training, but you can start working on things that are developmentally appropriate, like putting things away, following directions. We are considering learning to wait, how to wait, attending to the person or task, following directions, personal care. These are all things that are building blocks that we want to consider. I already mentioned cleaning up after themselves, putting away toys, break tasks down into small, doable things. Basic cooking activities, using visuals for basic cooking activities, and other things that we're asking them to do that maybe have multiple steps. Create visuals. You can take pictures, you can use videos. In preschool settings or even in the home, you can do role playing, you can have little kitchens set up even for the youngest of children and work on job-based play. You can have a grocery store set up in your home or in a center setting. Building independence as much as possible. When we start with that goal in mind, then we're working to support and put supports in place to allow each individual to gain the skills that they need to be as independent as possible during each stage. We want to teach motivation by working for tangibles using first then scenarios, and begin teaching the concept of work versus break time. When we're talking about younger children, we're not working towards them having a job anytime soon. So it's not all work and no play. We want this to be play like, enjoyable. But we do want to say if we're playing pretend and we're doing role playing, like, okay, it's time to go to work versus okay, it's time for a break, it's time to play, it's time to have fun. So make sure you're indicating that um, in when you're doing activities with younger children. So when we're looking at middle school age, we're past that elementary and preschool time period. We're going to start increasing time spent that's on a little bit more intentional vocational training while we're continuing to address developmental considerations as well as academics. When we go, whether if you're in a school setting, you might be going on a tour of a business, but if you're in at home, when you go to different businesses, talk about the different jobs. Take a look at what different people are doing. If you're in a school setting, you are taking community-based instruction trips. You're going out and visiting with different businesses and employees, and we're talking about the different tasks that people are doing, if that's something that students might enjoy, but just all different things. Expand the horizon and make sure that you're giving opportunities to learn about the different jobs and the different industries that are available for employment. Interest inventories, that is kind of an assessment that you're looking at asking the individual what things they're interested in, how to break things down, what types of tasks are you interested in, what are you good at, and considering those skills and their interest as we look forward to employment in the future. Community service and volunteering, that's something that children of all ages can start doing. You can go to a food bank, you can do other types of, you could work at an animal shelter, you could um, help clean a park. There's lots of tasks that you can do. Start to get discussing vocational training when you're working on IEPs. Consider adding goals when you're looking at individual education plans that make sense for future employment. We also, at this point, want to start asking our individuals that we're working with to complete non-preferred tasks. It is not always in the job, as any of us who have jobs know, not all tasks in our jobs are preferred. And so this is a time to start teaching and really focusing on that there are times that we have to do things that we don't really want to do, that we don't like to do. And that's where you might offer more incentives, offer more opportunity to motivate them to do those things, and recognize that, hey, and talk about, hey, this is something that you may not really want to do. And after this, we're going to get to do a more preferred task. So just incorporate that in. And this age range is a really good time to start talking about those things. And then start teaching, how do we accept suggestions and corrections? So that's something that we as a whole do not talk a lot about, is how to receive information about ourselves that may not be the best things. So we can teach that by saying, sometimes we don't hear things that are always the best thing about us. So we will take that information and think about it and say, thank you for giving me that information or that suggestion. Let me think on that. Or we might teach them to ask a follow-up question. How do I incorporate this into what I'm doing as I'm working on this task? So, preparation in high school and transition. Obviously, we're doing more with vocational training. We're tying academics to work based learning. We're doing more community based instruction where we're going out and we're instructing our students, our loved ones, our family members on things that are happening in the community. We're being intentional about community based vocational instruction. We're doing more interest inventories, really considering what they're interested in, but also what they're good at. Community service is back on this list, as well as volunteering. We're talking again, we're including much more focus in our individual education plans during ARD meetings about vocational considerations. We're taking tasks that may seem big and breaking those down through something called task analysis. And so we're really looking at, how do we break down a big task and teach individual steps to that task so that we can be successful? We start considering resume building activities, and we start documenting and keeping track of What types of volunteer activities have we participated in? Where have we done internships? What things are we good at? What things are we learning? You know, a student might get their um, food handling permit. So you build that in and document that you've got that already completed. That's something that's going to be beneficial on their resume in the future. We start also working on self advocacy, speaking up for ourselves appropriately and at the right times. We learn what things we need to disclose and how we talk about our own needs. And this is a really important time to, if we haven't done it already, to start talking about self advocacy. Obviously, soft skills is something that we need to, as a community in the world and just as a whole, we need to work more on soft skills and teaching future employees how to be good employees. How do you get along with others? What type of relationships and interactions should you have in the workplace? Those are all soft skills. Getting to work on time, good work ethic, anything that you think of when you think of work ethic falls into this category. So we start being very intentional about teaching those soft skills in this age range. And then person centered planning, which is similar to when we are doing individual education plans, but person centered planning is really, really about looking forward and putting that individual and their desires and their skills and things that are important both for them and to them at the forefront of our conversations. So, just some curriculum that I want to encourage you to look at, whether you're a family or whether you're a vocational training expert or a person who works in that field or someone who works in an educational setting. These are things that many of these things anyone can access, but we have used at Green Oaks something called Job Olympics, where we've created opportunities to learn skills, very specific skills. For example, um, filing or sorting in letters and mail that's coming in. And we have developed tasks in those different on these different things where our students work on that for a period of time and then they compete to show who has developed those skills, and it's just a great opportunity, and you can really do it with anything. We've had sacking, grocery sacking, we've had filling out information, data entry. I mean, you name it, you can create a Job Olympics task. Unique curriculum is another curriculum that you can look at. It's by Everway, and you can see that on online. It is something you would purchase, but it's a great curriculum to use for individuals with disabilities, and they have some great activities and skills that they work on in the area of vocational skills and pre-vocational. Teachers pay teachers. Anyone can access that. There are a couple of different ones I would encourage you to check, different teachers that I would encourage you to check, and one is Breezy Special Ed and then SPED Adulting. Start using appropriate vocational vocabulary. Look that up. You can find that online. Just Google search vocational vocabulary and you'll find that. Start using that when you're talking to students. Start using things that they're going to hear in the employment setting, that will be beneficial to, you're talking about clocking in and work ethic and those types of things. Keeping chore charts, doing job tasks at home or in a classroom, either one. Again, another thing that you can find and access online. There are a couple of publishers I want to encourage you to check out. One is James Stanfield, the other is Attainment Company. They both have just a plethora of information that can be beneficial. James Stanfield, in particular, has a lot of information and a lot of curriculum on things that are going to fall in those soft skills categories. And then Attainment Company has just a plethora of information and curriculum that you can use. YouTube videos are a great resource if you're looking to do anything. If you yourself are looking to fix something, you can find a YouTube video on how to do that. So look for YouTube videos that fit into the categories or the interest areas of the person you're working with, and look at different jobs and look at how to do different tasks and different jobs. Social stories are another great tool. Pinterest has some just great options for how to break tasks down, task analysis, visuals that you can use. Another curriculum that I highly recommend is Life Centered Education Transition Curriculum 2.0. Again, this is a curriculum that you would purchase, but it is a great tool. And then I already mentioned Unique Learning System by Everway. So that's another one that there are so many options there where you can help someone that you're working with grow in all different areas. Some course examples and things that you might consider working on: money management, business communication, both written and verbal, math applications, personal improvement. Things that fall in personal improvement are going to be uh, scheduling, calendar skills, managing your time, um, how you look, how you introduce yourself, those types of things. Time management is a big, not just knowing how to tell time, but how to use time and how to manage time. Technology, that's something that all of us can keep working on. That's an ongoing skill that we all need to continue to address. And you never stop learning in that area because things move quickly. Social skills in the workplace, again, that falls kind of in that soft skills area, skills for daily life, how to be successful in your daily life and in increasing independence. Personal finance, which goes with the money management, specific vocational skills and tasks. And that's where you can use tools like Pinterest and YouTube to look at all different types of vocational skills and tasks. So, what courses are available for your students? Where else can they learn these skills? Think outside of the box. You don't have to purchase a curriculum for these things. You can, and that can help guide you. But there are so many ways that you can do this, whether you're at home, you're out in the community with a family member, or you work professionally in this field. Person centered planning, we're not going to go very deep into this because this is a very detailed process, but it is about putting that individual that you're working with at the center and how to talk about things that are important to them and for them. So IEPs are a great start, and we should be thinking about how their goals apply to the vocational skills all through the educational process. But person centered planning, I mentioned, this is taking a look at what's important to them versus for them. So sometimes those things don't match up. For example, things that are important to me, I really like sweets. I like a sweet treat. But what's important for me is to balance that. I cannot eat sweet treats all the time and not eat healthy things because something that's important for me is getting a good balanced diet. So that's just a simple example of that. And when we're looking at person centered planning and we're considering that with an individual in the center of that consideration, we're really looking at both of those questions: what's important to and what's important for. We're thinking beyond the IP. This is a living document. It's something that will go with us, go with individuals far beyond their school age. Who is taking responsibility for helping that individual work on different skills at different time periods? We're working on things beyond the school day. This is not just a school document, it's outside of the school day, it's all encompassing. We're considering long term supports. What long term supports might this individual need to continue being successful? We create those perfect centered plans using goals for after the student exits. So, what goals will we have for after graduation? Or what will be our next goal in mind for employment? We're considering living, we're considering volunteer and community participation. So, we're looking at all of those things. It's really looking at the whole person and giving them the primary voice in the conversation. You can find more information about person centered planning online than I could ever present in this short time period. So I encourage you to check that out. One thing that we definitely can do a better job with is equipping employers to work with people who have neurodiversity. So, actually providing employer training. Some employers will be familiar with disability populations, some won't. How can you provide information so employers will understand the individual that you work with? How can you include positives and possibly negatives for each individual? And I think negative is a negative word, but we want to include what they can do, but we also want to include where they might need support and provide ideas for those support needs. We want to give general practices for how to provide instruction and feedback. How does this type of training apply to all employees? Because really and truly, that it's kind of like person-centered planning, but employees are all individuals, and so how can an employer use this information as they're considering what every employee's needs might be? And then how can employers and coworkers be empowered to build positive co-working relationships with employees and disabilities? We see this out in the real world all the time. Um, I've worked alongside people with disabilities, and sometimes we set different expectations with them. We're not sure as a coworker how to engage and how to have that positive working relationship. And so in training an employer or people who are coworkers, it doesn't have to be long or detailed. We can just provide an overview to someone and say, talk to me just like you would talk to anyone else. Um, we might, give tools that are beneficial. But another important message to share with employers is set standards that you would set for other employees. Just because someone has a disability or is neurodiverse does not mean that we can have reasonable accommodations, but it doesn't mean that we should allow them to do things that we would not allow any other employee to do. So empowering our employers or potential employers and training them on how to do that is really important. And it's a step that is we cannot skip over. Job coach training, when some of you may be job coaching, some of you may be parents or family members who are just naturally doing job coaching, but sometimes we're working with people and trying to teach them how to job coach. So we want to equip those job coaches to train on the job. We want to give them problem solving skills, provide support in executive functioning tasks. We want to teach them how to come up with solutions. So when someone is out at a job, and whether they have a disability or not, but they've got somebody who's training them, we don't want to come back and say or hear from someone, well, they can't do that. What I tell people is not don't tell me what they can't do. Look at each task or each potential problem as look at it through the lens of what supports do they need? How can I teach them how to do that? What steps can I put in place? Can I do a task analysis to break that job down or that task down into smaller parts and teach them a little bit at a time? Those are really important things to make sure that whoever is doing the job coaching knows how to do. Behavior management. So behavior is communication. And sometimes individuals with disabilities have deficits or challenges with communication. And so they'll demonstrate, you may observe a behavior that is problematic in the job site. And so, what we want to do is make sure our job coaching professionals, the people that are working with them, know how to manage and support behavior and how to build good working behaviors on the job. It's another problem solving issue. So, we need to teach people how to provide that support. Effective communication is so important. We need to teach employers and coworkers how to communicate with the job developer or job manager. We need to teach them how to communicate when and where and how with job coaches, how to communicate with the potential employee, the intern, the student that you're working with. We cannot leave communication out of any aspect of that. It's so important. Vocational training, it's never too late and it's never too early. The earlier we start thinking about vocational training and end goals for employment, the better. The more experience, the higher the chances of success. We don't want to leave it all to the school day. There's so much crammed into a school day. We want to be working on this in real life. Parents, family members, incorporate that into everything that you do. It can be just a natural part of your day outside of the school as well as in the school day. We want to consider job specific skills. That is great, but soft skills, again, as I've mentioned a couple of times, are just as important. Do not neglect soft skills for anybody that you're working with. It, again, I said earlier, this is not just applicable to people with disabilities. As an employer myself, I know that we are not doing a good job with individuals coming out of school in teaching them the work ethic and the skills that will help to make them more employable and be successful in the work setting. Academics are not necessarily a prerequisite for all jobs. You do not have to be able to do high levels of academics, high levels of reading in order to have lots of jobs. So don't let academics or challenges with academics stand in the way. Do some job sampling. Look at what jobs someone can do. How can we break down the task so that maybe they're just doing part of that job, but it's an area that our students or our loved ones or the people that we're working with can be successful and still be a beneficial part of the workplace. Vocational training at Green Oaks. So I mentioned that I'm the director of education at Green Oaks Education and Support. And this is just a quick overview of what we do at Green Oaks. So we have developed an initial assessment. We work on skill development, job placement, on the job support, and long term training, employer engagement, long term supports and monitoring. We also consider that one of the things that is missing in a lot of vocational training is the long-term supports and monitoring. And so we really need to make sure that that is part of the process. There are lots of payment options for vocational training at Green Oaks. So we use Texas Workforce Commission. We have contracts with them. We are able to do pre-employment training services through Texas Workforce. Some families are able to access our services through private pay, and others have Medicaid waivers that we can use for long term support. I encourage you to check that out and see what options might be available in your specific situation. So, some of the differentiators about Green Oaks vocational training is we really take a holistic approach. We are not just looking at vocational skills and tasks that someone can do. We're looking at the whole person and what they need to be successful in adult life. Employment is a piece of that, it's a very important piece of that, but we're looking at all of that person from kind of a 360 degrees. We're doing community integration. We are developing relationships in the community. We go out into the community, practicing skills in real life settings, but we're also working with community employer and employers in the community to say, what skills do you want potential employees to have? What things are important? What do we need to include in our curriculum? We expect long-term commitments. We have a long-term commitment, and we ask that people that we're working with commit to long-term supports and long-term opportunities. Employer education and inclusion. We go to our potential employers and talk to them about what they need. How can we provide them with training? How can we provide coworkers with training? And then adaptive programming. So we modify our programs so that if an individual has something very specific that they're interested in, how can we help them get to that? How can we adapt what we're doing to help them be successful in those high interest opportunities? So, contact information if you're interested in learning more about Green Oaks Education and Support and our programs. This is Akindele is our GoVoc director, and GoVoc is Green Oaks Vocational Director, and that is his email address. Jasmine is our admissions and marketing specialist, and that is Jasmine's email address. And then my name again is Lee Weedman. I'm the director of education. You're going to have much better opportunities to speak with someone and learn more by reaching out to Jasmine or Akindele first. They're able to get back with you quicker. So I encourage you to do that. But if you need something specific or would like more information from me, that's my email address as well. Our phone number is also listed here, as well as our website. So thank you so much for joining us today. This is something I'm passionate about. I love talking about vocational opportunities and how to help our people get there, and being a problem solver in this area. So again, thank you so much. And if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out.